How are you feeling today? There is a figure that has appeared in every culture, every era, the one who makes us laugh, yet leaves us thinking long after. They call him the Fool. But don't be too quick to dismiss that name, for the Fool is not merely clumsy, lost, or ignorant. He represents the most primal part of humanity, the part that still knows how to laugh, even when the world has grown too serious. From the ancient villages of Europe to royal palaces, the Fool has always appeared dancing, joking, even mocking kings and queens, and yet forgiven with a single smile. Because behind that foolishness lies a freedom everyone longs for. The freedom to speak truth, to live authentically, to make mistakes, and still be loved. We call him foolish, but deep down we envy him. While we are bound by rules, reputation, and control, he lives by only one law, the courage to be himself. Perhaps that is why the Fool is one of humanity's eternal archetypes. He is a child we once were before we learned to pretend, before we learned to hide, before we were taught that only the clever are accepted. If the sage lives to understand the world, then the Fool lives to experience it. And maybe that's why he never truly dies. He simply changes form, face, and time, yet continues to dance in every human heart, whisper to us, don't forget to laugh, even when the world gives you no reason to. If you open an old Latin dictionary, you will find the word follies, meaning an empty leather bellows filled with air. That word later became fool, a simple yet profound image, empty and yet able to ignite a flame. People often see emptiness as a lack, but in Western philosophy, phallus is emptiness charged with life force. The empty head of the Fool is not empty because he's stupid, but because it has not yet been stuffed with assumptions. He has room space to see the world with fresh eyes. Eyes not covered by the dust of knowledge. I already know. From that idea, the figure of the Fool became a symbol of vitality, the one who stirs the waters. The Fool is credited with infusing vitality into stagnant situations. Just as a bellows helps the fire burn brighter, the Fool blows life into the things that have fallen asleep within us. In 1511, the Dutch scholar Erasmus wrote in praise of folly. In it, the character Folly stands up and praises herself, declaring that the world would become unbearably dull without her. For without folly, humans would be nothing but cold machines, always correct, always rational, but utterly emotionless. Erasmus was mocking the society he lived in, from clergy to intellectuals to those who claimed themselves wise. And strangely, even popes and priests of that era laughed when reading his work because deep inside everyone recognized a part of themselves in the madness he described. In one passage, Folly says, "Friendship, marriage, and even love itself require a touch of foolishness. If everyone were too clear-headed, no one would dare to love anyone at all." The line sounds naive, but it unveils a subtle psychological truth. Perfect wisdom kills joy. Only when we dare to be foolish do we truly live, love, and trust. When Erasmus uses folly to represent irrationality, he is also speaking about the most primal layer of the human psyche, the part that still knows how to feel, laugh, and dream. And it is precisely that foolish part that protects us from becoming lifeless creatures in an overly rational world. Thus, fool is not just a word, it is an ancient reminder. Do not lose the childlike foolishness in your heart, because it is the very thing that keeps you human. There is an eternal paradox. The truly wise person is the one who knows they're ignorant. The one who believes they understand everything is the real fool. This is what Socrates said thousands of years ago. I know only one thing, that I know nothing. A sentence that seems simple, yet it became the foundation of every philosophy of awareness. It opens a miraculous concept. Wisdom begins with humility, because the deeper one goes into knowledge, the more clearly one sees that the ocean in front of them is vast beyond measure. When standing before the infinite, humility is no longer a virtue but a state of awakening. The fool is the symbol of that state. He does not hide his naivety. He is genuine, needs no proof, and avoids arguments. He simply listens, observes, and smiles. And within that smile lies a profound understanding that all of us, no matter how wise we believe we are merely children playing inside this universe. Shakespeare once wrote, "The fool thinks he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool." A sentence that sounds humorous, yet it captures the essence of an entire philosophy of life. When we dare to see our own limits, we open the door to the infinite. When we believe we already know everything, we shut down every possibility of learning. In today's world, people seem to equate intelligence with control. We want to know everything, to have reasons for everything, to explain things that were never meant to be dissected. But some things become further from their true nature the more we try to understand them. Like someone trying to grasp light in the palm of their hand, the tighter they hold, the more it slips away. The fool does not do that. He does not need understanding to live. He simply lives, and from that very living, understanding arises. It is the wisdom of simplicity. To him, life is not a problem to be solved, but a play to be experienced. He is the character Shakespeare described as the one who knows that everything is a stage and each person is merely an actor. He does not try to rewrite the script. He only wants to savor the moment he stands on that stage, and perhaps that is what makes him free. Because he is not afraid of being wrong, not afraid of being foolish, and not afraid of being laughed at. While the world is busy trying to be intelligent, he simply smiles as if he already knows something others have yet to realize. That true wisdom is not in knowing, but in letting go. Perfectionists constantly try to take control, while the fool chooses to loosen his grip. When others analyze, he feels. When others hunt for answers, he lives the question. This is what makes the fool the necessary counterbalance to the sage. One embodies knowledge, the other embodies life. One represents logic, the other embodies sensing. And only when these two forces meet does a human being become whole. If the sage teaches us how to think, the fool teaches us how to forget. If the sage says, "Understand more," the fool whispers, "Try less." So what needs to be known can reveal itself. In a world obsessed with efficiency, productivity, and reputation, we are losing the most essential part of ourselves. The foolish part that knows how to play, dream, laugh, and believe in the impossible. In truth, every great creation begins with a little foolishness. When Edison failed thousands of times with light bulbs. When Van Gogh painted works nobody understood. When dreamers spoke of visions no one believed. The world called them insane. History called them pioneers. Because every discovery begins with conscious foolishness. The foolishness to try, the foolishness to trust, the foolishness to not know. What we call foolishness may be the purest form of wisdom, a wisdom untouched by past wounds and unconfined by fear. And that is why Jung said, "The wisdom the soul requires is not intellect, but foolishness." The fool, with his naive appearance and clear heart, is the reflection of our soul before it was shaped by society. And if we have the courage to embrace the foolish part within ourselves, we will see that it is not weakness at all, but the quiet guide that leads us back to our most liberated nature. Because in the end, in a world that constantly demands we must be right, it is the fool who teaches us how to be real. People often think that laughter is a sign of happiness, but if you look deeper, you'll see many smiles in this world are born from suffering. The fool, the one who makes the whole world laugh, isn't always happy. Occasionally, he was the loneliest person in that room full of laughter. Every time he makes someone else laugh, he feels a little more empty inside. From the Middle Ages, court jesters or court fools were born to entertain kings and nobles. They have to speak the truth, but they are not allowed to be serious. They have to express their emotions, but they are never allowed to hurt. And so, laughter became a sophisticated form of camouflage for loneliness. Imagine someone who has to wear a clown mask every day. Outside, it's bright and noisy and makes everyone happy, but behind that red paint and that bell-shaped hat is a heart broken from pretending to be happy for too long. Psychology calls this the sad clown paradox, the paradox of the sad clown. People use laughter to hide depression, wit to avoid hurt, and the joy of others to temporarily forget their emptiness. Deep down, the fool is not just an entertainer. You are the one who carries the emotions of the entire society. When people didn't dare to cry, he laughed for them. When they didn't dare to tell the truth, he said it through jokes. But that made his pain worse, as no one asked what was left of his heart after that laughter. There's a detail in history that sends shivers down one's spine. In some medieval plays, jesters would pull the audience into Hellmouth, the monstrous mouth that opened like the gates of hell. The audience was both laughing and scared, unsure of what was real and what was acting, just like this life, where so many smiles are being paid for with silent exhaustion. From then on, the image of fool gradually split in two. On one side is the light, the bringer of joy. On the other side is darkness, the silent tear eater after laughter. When those two poles are no longer balanced, the fool transforms into another figure, the clown, and then the joker. And so the smile, a symbol of freedom, was distorted into a symbol of suffering. In film, literature, and in figures like the Joker, one thing is clear. When society doesn't allow anyone to be weak, the masked man will be the first to collapse. Laughter, without empathy, can become a form of cruelty. We laugh because we assume others are performing, but at times they are simply striving to survive. That is the subtle tragedy of the fool. He was born to save others from sadness, but no one saw his own sorrow. In the depths of the psyche, this is the moment when the emotional curve plummets, where light is swallowed by darkness, and where artificial joy reveals its true nature, the fear of being forgotten, unseen, and meaningless. But it is also from this darkness that a deeper layer of fool will emerge, a new form of awareness where he learns to confront the very loneliness he once concealed. Because laughter only heals when it comes through pain, and only when a fool dares to look directly at their wounds does he truly begin the journey of an awakened one. When people think of the fool, they often imagine a lovable fool who brings joy to others. But deep within classical psychology, the fool has a twin brother, the trickster, who represents cunning, trickery, and a penchant for teasing fate. The two figures were so similar it was hard to tell them apart. Both broke the rules, laughed at serious things, and turned the world upside down. But the motivation is different. The fool laughs to heal. The trickster laughs to dominate. The trickster is one who uses their intelligence as a double-edged sword. They don't create joy, but rather create games of power. He teases, deceives, and takes pleasure in watching others stumble. The Germans call that Schadenfreude, joy at the suffering of others. With the trickster, laughter is victory, but for the fool, laughter is liberation. A fool never laughs at others. He laughed with them. He jokes about himself in order to bridge the gap between people. Because when a person dares to laugh at themselves, all the walls in the room begin to crack. Everything became more real, softer, and more human. An old story tells that at the king's banquet, when everyone was proud and arrogant, a fool stepped forward, stumbled in front of them, and then burst out laughing. The crowd laughed along, and in an instant, all power vanished. Because they realized it turns out everyone can fall, and in that moment, humanity is freed from its role. While the fool brings freedom, the trickster brings chaos. He used his intelligence to trap others in illusions, while the fool used his naivete to help them see the truth. The trickster wants to win. The fool wants to understand. The trickster wants to control. The fool wants to connect. And that's why the fool is the embodiment of courage. I embrace being misunderstood and laughed at because I know only when people dare to laugh at themselves can they truly forgive others. There's a very subtle difference between these two types of people. The trickster always tries to make others look evil. Fools reveal their true colors. One person shrinks a human being in shame. The other helps a human being open up in freedom. And it was there that we realized humor is not entertainment, but an art of healing. It tears away the ego's serious facade and makes people, even if only for a few seconds, return to themselves. In life, we have both. The trickster part that loves to control and the fool part that just wants to be innocent. If we are not vigilant, the trickster will seize laughter, turning it into a weapon. But if we know how to cherish it, the fool will regain that laughter, turning it into a prayer. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "I believe that only those who know how to laugh deeply can understand tragedy, and perhaps only the fool fully understands that, because you're both the bringer of light and the one who walks through darkness." He knows that a smile is only valuable when it comes with understanding. When someone dares to laugh in adversity, it's not that they're without pain, but that they've touched the freedom within that pain. The fool doesn't try to teach anyone how to be content. He just gently reminded me, happiness really begins when you stop trying to look happy, and so in a world of masks, you still chose to step out, to truly smile a smile that could melt even the walls intelligence had built. Throughout human history, it wasn't the wise men nor the warriors, but the fools, who were the only ones allowed to speak the truth to the king. In European courts during the Middle Ages, the fool, also known as the court jester, identified by his cap, bells, and jester's staff, was granted a rare privilege. He could mock even those in power and still survive. While the entire court bowed before the throne, he dared to point at the king, laugh, and say, "I see that you look very lonely, even when everyone is kneeling." And the strange thing is, the king didn't get frustrated, because deep down, he knew there was a part of the truth in it, a part that no one else dared to say. The fool exists as a pressure release valve for power. He expressed the thoughts that everyone had, but no one dared to voice. You are the person who prevents the world from becoming overwhelmed by its own seriousness. Some people consider fools to be inferior, but in reality, no one in the palace understands the truth better than he does. People are afraid of the truth. A fool doesn't. His fearlessness stems from the fact that he has nothing to lose. That's why the fool became a symbol of absolute freedom. Freedom doesn't come from strength, but from fearlessness. A person no longer bound by honor, face, or status is someone who can say everything that others only dare to think. In many courts, the king would often ask the fool's opinion before consulting his advisors. Despite the flowery flattery, only the fool's laughter is genuine. He could use laughter to say the most bitter things and still make the entire court burst into laughter, an art only the free could master. Some fools went too far and were beheaded for challenging the fear of power, but it was that very death that made them symbols of courage. This was due to their courage in speaking the truth in a world where honesty carries the greatest risk. A fool is not just a joker. He is the gatekeeper of the collective soul, the one who reminds society, "You are so serious, you're killing yourself." Psychology calls this the resistance function of the unconscious. When individuals or groups become excessively controlling, moralistic, or perfect, the fool emerges to disrupt the norm, reviving a portion of the buried madness, life, and truth. In every person, there is also such a court jester, a part that wants to speak the truth, laugh loudly, and do foolish things without asking permission. But we were taught to be silent, to be proper, to be mature. And so, the fool within me slowly died. But when we dare to live that part again, to speak our truth and to laugh when others frown, we will feel a kind of freedom that no power can bestow. The ancients believed that keeping a fool in the palace was a way to protect the throne from evil spirits. It may sound superstitious, but it's actually very true psychologically. When a powerful person no longer has anyone who dares to tell them the truth, they have begun down the path of self-destruction. The fool exists to save both the king and the kingdom from their shadows. And if we look back at the world today amidst the microphones, the speeches, and the beautiful words and ideas, perhaps what the world needs most is still a fool who dares to speak the truth with a fearless smile. Jung, Robert A. Johnson, and many psychoanalysts hold a particular fondness for a classic story, the tale of Parsifal the Holy Fool. Parsifal is a young, innocent boy who lives with his mother in the forest. One day, he saw knights on horseback passing by. The light on their armor made him think they were angels. From that moment on, an unconscious desire arose to leave my mother's embrace and seek the divine. He left, taking with him innocence and also the first wound of life, the pain of separation. That journey leads Parsifal to the Grail Castle, where the king, the Fisher King, is dying. His wound was very strange. It was so deep that he couldn't die, but it also never healed. The entire kingdom became barren, the land cracked, and the water dried up because the king's sorrow was the world's sorrow. During the ritual night, Parsifal witnesses the Holy Grail glowing, a symbol of life, meaning, and the soul. But he didn't ask anything. This was because his mother often told him, "Don't ask questions," and just because he didn't ask, he lost the chance to save the world. When he woke up, the castle was gone. Parsifal stepped outside, alone, with a nameless sense of loss. From then on, he wandered for 20 years, searching for the castle, searching for the question he should have asked that day. What are you hurting from? It's a simple question, but it captures the essence of empathy. It's a question that the modern world has forgotten how to ask. We often ask others what they do, have, and where they're going, but rarely ask, "Are you in pain?" According to Jung, the Fisher King's wound is a symbol of the soul wound that everyone must go through as they mature. That's the moment we lose our innocence, lose the belief that the world is always beautiful and fair. That's when I first realized no one can save you but yourself. Parsifal symbolizes the foolish and naive part of ourselves that is fundamentally honest. He's not intelligent or clever, but he possesses enough purity to see the pain of others without judgment, and that is the key to healing. Robert A. Johnson wrote, "Only the foolish part of us can touch the deepest wounds. We can truly reconnect with our souls only when we dare to be foolish, dare to feel, dare to ask, and dare to hurt." It's also a journey that everyone has to go through, from innocence to hurt to disappointment, and then finding meaning. Parsifal spent 20 years just to learn one thing, that the most important question lies not in knowledge, but in compassion. When he returned to the castle, the question naturally arose, whom does the Holy Grail serve? Immediately, the Fisher King was healed and the land bloomed again. In symbolic language, the Grail is the soul, and that question is the awakening. What do we live for? What do we suffer for? And who within us needs to be saved? Parsifal didn't become a hero because of his strength, but because he dared to confront the pain that others avoided. And that is the highest meaning of the Fool. The Fool is the only one who can heal, because only the Fool is brave enough to love without demanding, to believe without certainty, and to ask seemingly naive questions, yet save the soul of humanity. When someone dares to live authentically and believes in the absurd, the world calls them crazy. But as time goes by, it is precisely those madmen who become symbols of intelligence, because they dared to live according to their inner truth, not external laws. The Fool in literary history is not just a jester, but rather the seeds of a hero. Look at Don Quixote, the one who fought windmills, believed they were giants. The world laughed at him, but behind that madness lay a pure belief in ideals. He wasn't afraid of becoming a laughingstock because what he was seeking wasn't recognition, but rather the meaning of living with faith. That's what makes the Fool stand out from the crowd. Others live to be accepted, and I live to understand why I exist. In Dostoevsky's The Idiot, Prince Myshkin, a man considered simple, Prince Myshkin enters a society filled with lies, where everything has a price, including love and kindness. And only through clarity you make everyone around you see the darkness within themselves. He doesn't preach morality. He simply loves people with an open heart, and so people called him a fool. But that foolishness has extraordinary power. It makes others feel ashamed of their hypocrisy. It goes without saying that, like light, it still reveals everything hidden in the darkness. Or like Tolstoy's Ivan the Fool, the kindest youngest brother exploited by his siblings, still willing to forgive, still doing beneficial things. And in the end, he was the winner. You didn't win because of strategy, but because no one can defeat a heart without hatred. Those three figures, Don Quixote, Prince Myshkin, and Ivan, they all share the same essence, humanistic foolishness, and that's what makes them immortal. They are not perfect, not strong, and not praised by society, but they live so truly, it's heartbreaking. They are proof of that purity, though mocked, is still the only thing that can save the world. In the eyes of the world, the fool is just an outcast. But in the depths of spirituality, you are the one who paves the way. Because you dared to cross the boundary between reason and truth, between intelligence and innocence. You bravely straddled the line between rationality and spirituality. The world will always need people like that. Those who dare to believe even when no one else does. Dare to love even when love is foolish, and dare to smile even when everything is falling apart. They don't fight with swords and spears. But purity is the only weapon darkness cannot steal. That's why the fool became the archetype of the hero in countless human stories. You didn't save the world with power, but with the truth of the heart. And sometimes, all it takes is one person brave enough to be foolish enough to live authentically. The world has changed. The wise know how to live safely. Only a fool would dare to go through a storm. However, only those who have endured the storm can truly perceive the pristine sky. If you've ever seen a tarot deck, you'll recognize a special card. The Fool is often numbered 0. The Fool is neither the beginning nor the end. 0 is a complete circle, but also the initial emptiness from which everything begins. In symbology, 0 is infinity in its simplest form. On that card, a young man is walking on a cliff, with only a small bag on his shoulder, holding a white flower in his hand and a small dog running beside him. as if a spirit is warning, "Be careful, there is a deep abyss ahead." But he didn't look down. He looked up, smiled, and continued walking. That moment was the fool's leap, a leap of faith. He took this leap without relying on reason, without a map, and without knowing what awaited him. He walked on, believing that the path would appear when the heart was ready. The fool's journey is not just a mystical story, but an allegory for the entire spiritual journey of humanity. From innocence to understanding, from falling down to growing up, from being lost to returning. In the 22 cards of the major arcana, the Fool is the one who sets out journeying through the symbols of strength, love, death, and awakening to finally reach the last card, the World, a symbol of unity, where he becomes the dancer in the eternal circle of the universe. But the most beautiful thing is when he reaches his destination, the Fool doesn't become anyone else. He's just returning to himself, the only difference being this time he knows who he is. Carl Jung once said, "The journey of the soul is the journey from the unconscious to self-awareness. Tarot is the map for that journey, and the Fool is the guide. You are the part of me that dares to begin, dares to believe, and dares to take steps without guarantees." That's why this card never means foolish. It symbolizes primal innocence. Innocence before knowledge, pure faith in life, before experience and fear make us doubt everything. And then, as we walk through life, each time we fail, each time we stumble, and each time we are hurt, that is another card in our own personal tarot journey. Because only through experience does the Fool within us become the wise person. At the heart of that journey is the Ouroboros, the symbol of the snake swallowing its own tail, an image of eternal cycles where endings and beginnings merge into one. Just like the Fool, he is both a beginner and a soul that has passed through thousands of lifetimes to return to its origin. We never stop exploring, and when we finish, we will return to where we began and see it for the first time. T.S. Eliot. Perhaps the Fool isn't crazy, but rather the only one who dares to step outside the boundaries of reason. In the world of computation, you are a dreamer. In a world of fear, you are the one who dares to believe. And in a world where everyone wants to be certain, you are the one who understands that there is no truly safe path, but there are footsteps when guided by the soul that always go in the right direction. When we dare to set out, even empty-handed, to step into the unknown, even when afraid, we carry within us the energy of the Fool. And when we lift our heads, smile, and look toward the abyss with quiet faith, that is when the journey of awakening begins. By the end of the journey, the Fool is no longer a fool. He became the Holy Fool, the one who passed through darkness, fell, was hurt, and then returned in silence, with a smile no longer carefree but full of understanding. If at the beginning he laughed because he didn't know, now he laughs because he knows and has accepted everything. In Christianity, St. Paul once wrote, "If anyone thinks he is wise in this world, let him become a fool so that he may become truly wise." That saying is the very soul of the Holy Fool archetype. For true wisdom lies not in knowledge, but in letting go of knowledge. True wisdom does not reside in power, but rather in the courage to surrender it. The Holy Fool is someone who has understood that all fame, all achievements, all arguments to prove oneself, all vanish the moment we realize there is nothing to prove. He has completed the circle of the tarot from the first card to the world and returned to the starting point, but with a different heart. It's still the same person, but their consciousness has changed. Like a child returning home after a lifetime of adventure, the same smile, the same eyes, but now in those eyes is the stillness of the universe. Carl Jung once wrote, "The Fool is the divine child, the bridge between consciousness and the unconscious." It is alien to this world, yet connected to it. It walks between two realms where reason and soul meet. That's why the holy fool always scares those in power, because he can't be controlled. No longer needing to be loved, recognized, or victorious, he becomes immune to all the games of the world. In Russian mythology, they are called Urodivi, fools for God who lived in poverty and solitude, but the light within them made even tyrants tremble. They were ridiculed and beaten, but they never lost faith in humanity. The holy fool is not a fool. He simply rejected the world's definition of wisdom. The world wants you to fight, you choose silence. The world wants you to win, but you choose to give up. The world wants you to be right, you choose peace. And it is madness itself, which is the highest form of intelligence. When someone dares to be a fool in the eyes of the world, they become a wise person in the eyes of the universe. When a person dares to live according to the call of their soul, they step outside of all rules and touch upon what every philosopher and every religion seeks: absolute freedom. The fool is no longer afraid of being laughed at because he knows laughter is the soul's prayer. In that state, there is no longer a distinction between wise and foolish or between right and wrong. Only a pure presence remains where humans no longer try to understand life but simply live with it as it is. And perhaps that is true enlightenment. No noise, no brilliance, just the quiet smile of the fool who has passed through all the circles of life and finally realized, I don't need to be anyone else. You just need to go back to being yourself. And that's the content of this episode. If you feel a sense of resonance with these reflections, don't forget to follow the channel and stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. See you soon. Bye.